Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to The Truth. I'm your host, the one you love the most, Niall Hesson, back with a brand new episode here in The Truth. Back once again with my boy AJ Ponciano. AJ, how are you doing here today?
I'm doing great now. How about yourself?
I'm doing pretty great as well. We are basically just finished up with week 4. We are still recording, or we are recording this as Monday Night Football is still going on, both matchups here, but we figured this was the best time to go out and get this podcast out just because we got some other shows that we need to film, and a lot of times too, it's hard enough to get together for one. So we kind of adjusted to our takeaway show being recorded on Monday night, and the rest just TBD as the week goes on. But anyways, that is what our show is here today. It is our week 4 NFL/fantasy football takeaways. We'll primarily talk about fantasy football and the relevancy there, but we also are mixing in some NFL stuff and things like that. So it should be fun, should be exciting. AJ, go ahead and give me your first takeaway from last week.
So, first takeaway is Mahomes' season could go really downhill, especially in fantasy if Rasheed Rice is out. I get that they have Worthy, and Worthy did have like a 50-yard touchdown in that game, but they really could not move the ball. Mahomes did finish the game with 245 yards, but also only one touchdown and he also had an interception. That brings the season total to 6 touchdowns to 5 interceptions, with 904 yards. We get Mahomes one of the best quarterbacks in the league, but he's not a fantasy quarterback at this point. Maybe his MVP year, that first full season that he played, maybe the next two were good fantasy seasons, but I don't think Mahomes should be looked at as a top fantasy quarterback because he can't give you the same type of productions as like a Jalen Hurts, as a Josh Allen can, especially on the ground. You're not going to get that, and plus with the wide receivers and weapons that they have, really haven't been able to push the ball down the field, and that hasn't really been how the Chiefs have been scoring a lot of their points. More of those smaller drives, dishing out to a lot of different guys and be able to just get those small chunks. And also, without having Pacheco was one of the big things. I think once they get him back, that would also hurt Mahomes' fantasy value.
So my first takeaway from last week is just honestly the Commanders' offense, just in general, is skyrocketing. I mean, Jaden Daniels is having a great start to the year. I know in ESPN right now, although the Monday night games are still going on, he is like the number one ranked fantasy quarterback, averaging 23.4 fantasy points per game. Brian Robinson is having success. It seems like he gets in the end zone every game. I think the biggest thing is Scary Terry. He's had tremendous amounts of success the last 2 weeks. In week 3, 4 catches, 100 yards, and a touchdown for 20 points. Last week, 7 catches, 52 yards, and a touchdown for 18.2 points. So the Commanders' offense in general is really exceeding. And I think I was a big skeptical just because of that and just because of Jane Daniels transitioning as the Heisman Trophy winner to the NFL. But he's really proven me wrong and has really done a great job moving forward of getting his team to the position where it needs to be. And not only is he able to have success, but the rest of the Commanders' offense is able to have success as well. I think there was a lot of skeptics, including myself, that was kind of hesitant to draft Commanders players just because I feel like I had gotten burned in the past. Now, I know Brian Robinson's success is kind of attributed to the fact that, Eckler's been out and things like that. But I do think it is important to kind of see as time goes on what does happen with the Commanders offense. Is this going to be sustained, right? Or is this something that, it's kind of one of those things that, okay, it's going well right now, but maybe not as time goes on. There's a lot of things to really see. But right now, the Commanders' offense is thriving, and a big part of that is Jaden Daniels and his ability to use his legs and use his arm very efficiently. Okay, what's your second takeaway?
So, staying with the Commanders, I just have that you're wrong again about another rookie quarterback. You were wrong about Stroud last year, and I would say
Hey,
you were a
we're still
hater
early
of
in the
it.
season.
We are still early in the season, but he just threw his first interception last week. First interception in 4 games up to this point. Almost 900 yards, 3 passing touchdowns, which isn't going to be a big part of the game. Obviously, it's going to rushing, like how you mentioned, for fantasy. Is 218 rushing yards and 4 rushing touchdowns. I mean, was a 7-to-1 ratio of touchdown to turnovers. I don't think he has any fumbles. Or sorry, he does have 2 fumbles. So it's gonna be one of those things that yes, he's gonna be a little different in Stroud than the numbers he put up, but right now you're 0-3, honestly, if you want to go back to the Will Levis take right now on rookie quarterbacks and how their careers are gonna not how their careers are shape out, but how their rookie year is gonna shape out.
Fair enough. 100%. Was that what your second takeaway was, or did you just want to
Yeah.
slander me?
No, that was my second takeaway was that you were wrong about Jane Daniels and you're now 0 for 3 in 3 consecutive years about rookie quarterbacks.
Hey, I'll take my losses where they come, and this is one of the losses that I've taken, at least for now. I gotta just trust rookies more often. I think I was a little scared just because the number two pick, I feel like, is either really good or really bad. I mean, CJ Stroud was really good, Mitchell Trubisky was really bad. I mean, I feel like the two spot, it's always one of those things that you just never really know. But Jane Daniels has definitely proven why he was a Heisman Trophy winner. I think also partially was the fact that I didn't really like what he did at Arizona State. I know he did better in LSU and it's a better conference, but I kind of thought like, okay, he was pretty bad at Arizona State compared to LSU, that maybe his last season at LSU was fluky. It's really hard to fluke a season that he did, especially in the premier conference like he's in. But I didn't really know. Now I know that Jane Daniels is legit and the real deal.
Hey, you're the running back whisperer. I'm the quarterback whisperer. That's how it goes. I think wide
Fair
receivers we
enough.
both are pretty similar on, but I usually get them wrong with the running backs, except for like the blue chip guys like Bijan. You usually get those hidden gems, and then for some reason it's flipped. I can't get a running back, but you can't get a quarterback.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. So my second takeaway was kind of similarly to the Commanders' offense, but the Bears' offensive production is starting to go up a little bit. Now, Caleb Williams kind of stalemated. I mean, at 157 yards for one touchdown. I'm more looking at DeAndre Swift, who by far had his best game last season as a Bear. He had 29.5 fantasy points, 16 for 93 yards, one rushing touchdown, seven catches for 72 yards. I think all in all, Caleb Williams felt more comfortable in the pocket, which is obviously a big thing for him. It's one of those things that you look at a guy like Caleb Williams, and he obviously has all the tools that he needs to be a successful NFL quarterback, but there's also a surrounding cast there. It's not just Caleb Williams. You got guys like DJ Moore, Cole Kmet, who they recently signed to an extension, Keenan Allen, guys like this that really have kind of surrounded Caleb in a good position to have success. And really, I mean, DeAndre Swift really did a good job of kind of breaking himself out and showing his relevancy. The Bears also at times, run like a couple running back system, and maybe DeAndre Swift's breakout game will show that, hey, he is a good running back, because DeAndre Swift, I feel like, is just kind of thrown around for no reason. He's a talented running back. He's a great pass catching running back, a great hard nosed runner, and I just think he doesn't get the respect he deserves. So I said the Bears offense kind of like showcasing what they're able to do, but I feel like I should counteract that point and say that the offense itself, like Caleb Williams, kind of took a step back from the past week. But what really emerged from this past week, at least for me, was finally able to use DeAndre Swift in a positive manner and get his fantasy value back up to where a lot of people were expecting it to be. Okay, your third takeaway.
That Christian McCaffrey's done for the season. That could be more of a hot
Yeah,
take, but
did you see that Achilles stuff?
yeah, Achilles tendonitis in both of them. Not just the one like how he was and a calf injury on one side that was going on early on. He has them both Achilles right now,
See, and
which is
also too,
horrible for
like,
running backs.
yeah, well, also too, like, I feel like this is gonna sound stupid. I don't know if I've ever heard of a situation like this with Achilles tendonitis. I have hardly even heard of Achilles tendonitis in one Achilles, let alone two. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah, I mean, and you think too, not to, I mean, I know you're gonna obviously elaborate further, but the 49ers don't care about your fantasy teams. Like, they just don't. So they're not going to rush Christian McCaffrey back. If he doesn't play this year, he's not going to play. They've obviously seen what Jordan Mason can do as a reliable substitute and how talented that offense is as a whole. Their priorities of getting Christian McCaffrey on the field is very low. Their priority is keeping him healthy. If that means sitting him out the entire year so he's healthy next year, so be it. But continue with what you were saying.
yeah, like you said, like it's a weird situation, and like the whole thing about Jordan Mason knowing a week before the season started, like they had to know there was something going on with both legs or both
Which
Achilles,
is
and
still crazy, the fact that he knew like a week before the season and nothing really has been said from that point forward.
yeah, no, it is, and like you're saying, like Achilles tendonitis, like that's a weird one. Like that's not an injury that just pops up and you're like, oh, he's gonna be out for 5 6 weeks. No, tendonitis sticks around forever. That's one of those things that like I feel like our parents have like they have some type of tendonitis injury and like they're dealing with it for the rest of their life. I mean, in your
Right.
Achilles, I mean, the most probably one of the most vulnerable areas in your legs, one of the most used tendons for running backs, explosive movements, cuts, and all that. I mean, one wrong move for Christian McCaffrey and he could tear both. Honestly, a jump cut and he could tear
Yeah.
or he could tear both Achilles and two Achilles tears, you're not going to go get surgery and recovering from that. Your career is
Yeah.
done with that. So yeah, Christian McCaffrey, I'm calling. He's out for the year, like how you said. They aren't going to rush him back. The only time that they're going to rush him back is if they make it to a conference championship and Super Bowl, and like they really need him and they believe that he can perform.
Yeah, and even that, who knows? Maybe they wouldn't even have him perform. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, they probably would just because it's such a big game. But, it's how much more years can they get a once in a generational type talent that Christian McCaffrey is? So be very curious to see what kind of happens moving forward there. My third takeaway is Jalen Hurts' fantasy value, in my opinion, is just continuing to plummet. Now, Jalen Hurts has not had the best of years. I feel like I kind of got this one right. I mean, he's had good amount of success in general, but it feels like he hasn't really done a lot. He's had actually a good job running the football, which is something that I said he needed to do. He's had 2 rushing touchdowns, 2 games with 8 carries, 2 games with 13 carries. But it's his passing that really concerns me. Now, granted, he didn't have Devontae Smith or AJ Brown, so that's obviously going to affect his passing. But still, going into this matchup, or actually after week 4, he has 4 touchdowns to 4 interceptions, really spotty on the yards. They look terrible against the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers beat them from the jump. And it really begs the question, at least for me, like, is Jalen Hurts like trending in the wrong direction? I feel like the Eagles made an interesting choice by keeping Sirianni after the Eagles collapsed last season. And I just feel like it's not a good fit right now. And obviously, adjusting to losing Jason Kelsey, the Hall of Fame center, is going to be part of it. I will say the one thing that's actually worked that I was surprised has worked is the tush push. And every team basically does some form of it now. And it wasn't that I was not thinking that it wasn't going to work, but it helps when you got a very mobile quarterback like Jalen Hurts who's ran the ball through the tush push probably thousands of times. But it also helps when your center is a Hall of Famer anchoring the entire offensive line. So I was a little bit skeptical about that, but they've been able to, have success with it. And Jalen Hurts has been able to use his legs. But again, looking at Jalen Hurts' stats in general, I mean, he's only had one game, which was one game of rushing that was more than 33 yards. That was week 2, where he actually had good success. 13 carries for 85 yards and a touchdown. I want to see Jalen Hurts try to get more yards. I know he's obviously trying to preserve himself, which he should, but I feel like he's already done a good enough job of protecting himself. Why don't we call some designed runs like Lamar Jackson? Yeah, Lamar Jackson at times can run like a madman, but it's just helped that Ravens offense continue to thrive and flourish. And that's something that I'm really going to look for as time continues to move forward here, and what Jalen Hurts is going to do with the Eagles offense moving forward. Okay, your fourth takeaway.
The Raiders are just disrespecting Devonta Adams. Like it's one of those things. Like I get it, he was inactive last week, so stats are a little bit down. But so far through 3 games, he has 18 receptions. He does have 209 yards, but only 1 touchdown. One of the big things, he only has 27 targets, which I know is a good amount to 9 targets per game. But the Raiders don't have really anyone else to throw to. It's him and Brock Bowers, and they don't target him enough. One my other the part about that is that he had one big game against the Ravens, nine receptions, 110 yards, 1 touchdown. Say if he only gets half of that production, his stats look much worse. He's up to 150 yards, only 14 receptions. He may not even have that touchdown, which is his only one on the season. I think they're going to trade him. I think there's a very good chance of it. I know there's a lot of rumors before the year started that they could get traded. Honestly, maybe a hot take here. He could go to the Chiefs. I get it's an interdivisional trade. You don't really see that, but Chiefs need someone. Like right now, Kelsey, I get it, he had a good week, but he was the only option. Worthy, in my opinion, still not a number one type of receiver. Juju Smith Schuster is one of the only other wide receivers on that roster. I don't think that they're going to be able to get him to revamp his career. I mean, he had a 1,000 yard year a few years back with the Chiefs, but I don't think it's going to be there. Honestly, I think Devonta Smith could get traded to the Chiefs. They need help. They need something. The Raiders are they obviously had some good wins. They had that win over the Ravens, but outside of that, I don't think they're competing for anything. I think Adams wants out. I think that inactive this week wasn't a true injury inactive. I think it's one of those things that he may be wanting to preserve his body from injuries and be like, hey, I want out of here.
Yeah, it's always interesting with those wide receivers in particular. And I don't know if you watched the receiver documentary, but you could tell that he was already beginning to get frustrated with the Raiders. And yeah, they get a quarterback change, and it just hasn't really looked great. And Devontae Adams will let you know if he's not happy, and he's already made that known. So The question becomes, do they ship him? Because they could get good value out of it. And are the Raiders really competing for something great, or should they maybe venture a different way there? My fourth takeaway, I think I've mentioned this before, it's really going to pain you, but Bo Nix is just not it right now. It's just not. I'm sorry. I know you're going to say, but I was even watching the Broncos game,
But
and
he
that
threw
was
his
I
first
didn't.
touchdown. He threw his
I'm
first
I'm
touchdown.
glad.
How is he?
Listen, I'm glad I wasn't watching the Broncos Jets game because that was a disaster, and that was probably hard for you to watch on both sides. Bo Nix, obviously your guy from Oregon, and Aaron Rodgers, obviously your guy from California. But I remember every time I was looking down at like the games at the bottom of the bar, it's like Bo Nix 6 for 11, -8 yards. I'm like, how do you pass for -8 yards? Like that at that point, it's very sad and pathetic. But there's also a different part of that. I understand he's a rookie and I understand that it takes time, but it comes a point too where it's not necessarily just Bo Nix, but it's the rest of the Broncos offense. The rest of the Broncos offense isn't able to thrive and have success. Bo Nix finished 12 for 25, a 48% completion percentage, 60 yards, one touchdown, 5 carries for 3 yards, 6.7 fantasy points. Obviously, not very ideal. He did have the touchdown, his first touchdown of the year, but it takes time, right? And Bo Nix is going to be, I mean, fine. I don't really know because you can't really judge for rookie quarterbacks moving forward, right? Caleb Williams kind of looks like Bo Nix at times. So it's really hard to gauge, but Sean Payton's a really good coach, and I think he'll really be able to hone it down. He showed glimpse of it last week. I mean, 216 yards, 9 carries, 47 yards, and a touchdown. He's got all the tools that he needs, but right now, Bo Nix is definitely hurting the Broncos offense, which is obvious, but he's also kind of hurting himself just because he's kind of taken it's harder for him to adjust to the NFL as is easier for some guys. And that's part of it. But I'm really curious to see what his fantasy value is going to be moving forward. But right now, it's just not working. All right, go ahead and give me your final takeaway. My final takeaway is Ramondre Stevenson's production is just flat out plummeting at this point. And it's unfortunate because I am a Ramondre Stevenson fantasy owner. But it's one of those things like at the moment, it's just hard to watch. And it's not necessarily Ramondre Stevenson's fault. There is a piece that is Ramondre Stevenson's fault because I believe it's 2 fumbles in 2 games, which obviously does hinder his fantasy production. It's the Patriots' inability to just block. Jacoby Brissett literally looks like a guy that's just getting swallowed every play. I mean, no wonder why they don't want to put Drake May in there because I honestly think Brissett's career is going to end 5 years earlier than it was supposed to end, just the amount of hits that he's taking. You don't want your rookie quarterback taking those hits. That would obviously be detrimental, but it's also just you're setting him up for failure. You're setting whoever the quarterback up is for failure. And it's one of those things, if your offensive line is that bad, you need a mobile quarterback. And Jacoby Brissett is not your mobile quarterback. I mean, sure, go ahead and throw Joe Milton in there, my guy, future Hall of Famer as well, but it's just not going to work, right? So the Patriots, they need a lot of soul searching. Ramondre was great in weeks 1 and 2 because Ramondre was able to be good out of the passing game and get some receptions and also just tremendous rushing value. it's one of those things that's interesting too. These last two games on the road at the Jets and the 49ers, his production is going to be stalemated. Got a couple interesting matchups: Miami, Houston, Jacksonville. Those are three AFC matchups there. Defenses either good or spotty at times. So it's going to be really curious to see about Ramondre's production right now as a whole. Has just absolutely been terrible, and I don't know what to do at this point. And I guess he doesn't probably know either. On top of that, Antonio Gibson has become a really reliable option out of the passing game. So lose-lose situation for Ramondre. It's hard. It'll be hard to trade him. I think he'll be fine, but right now it's just seeming like his value is plummeting. Thank you guys for listening to another episode here on The Truth. If you guys did enjoy it, make sure you follow The Truth on Twitter, The Truth as one, to stay up to date with the latest information regarding The Truth, including podcast dates, podcast uploads, and other important information you don't want to miss. Make sure you guys also follow The Truth on Instagram and TikTok at the.tt.truth. Are you looking to find a drink that offers peak hydration, raises your energy levels, speeds up your recovery, and keeps your mind sharp through focus and memory? Look no further than Acid Rainwater. I'm excited to partner with Bloodline Sports AZ and Acid Rainwater, which focuses on peak hydration and productivity, while also maintaining ecosystem-friendly product. Use code HESSON15, that's HESSON15, for 15% off every purchase. As always, I'm your host, the one you love the most, Niall Hesson, joined once again by AJ Ponciano. Take care and good night.